guys, sorry about that. I literally tipped over my glass of water, so I took a quick break. So that was my bad.
It's one of those things where if you don't clean it up right away, that's how you get ants.
That's how you get it.
Probably not with water.
With water. Maybe sugar and stuff, but not water. Anyways, getting back into our conversation with Death Note. What we were going to start talking about, I would assume, is the fact of... We were talking about this adaptation. And as far as I know, it's about an hour and 41 minutes, which to me is not long.
No.
And,
God, no.
God, no. And, you know, even, like, I was looking at the character list, and, like, to prove my point of it being more Americanized and possibly just skewering the characters, like, Misa, her character is now Mia, and they don't have the same last name. So I'm assuming they're just going to go out in left field and do what they want with her, which is very sad.
So now, it's been a while since we've watched the original. So is she the one who also has a Death Note? Or was this the one? Okay.
She was the blonde.
Yeah.
Who got manipulated by light.
Yeah, well, everybody got manipulated by light, but...
well, her more so.
So then, like, if they have her in there, God, they have to then have a I guess they don't have to, but are they even going to get into the second Death Note? Are they going to get into the other, you know, I forget what her, you know, Death God's name was, but I mean, that was a crucial plot point in the entire series, and you have an hour and 40 minutes, and let's say that entire time was actually spent, you know, in the actual film, and not just like, oh, you know, here's 4 minutes of credits as well, so that would cut it down to like an hour 35. Like, that would be another character, another set of...
I remembered. Her name was Rem.
Rem.
Her god.
Oh,
Right. Her god. God, I can't speak.
Her death god.
Her death god. I guess.
He's the death god Ryuk.
Excuse me.
Death god Rem.
Some I can't talk. The Shinigami.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got that on my own and I thanked you. Anywho. Yeah, so Rem, as far as I know, I haven't heard her being in it, so I doubt it, but I think that's what I mean. I don't know how badly they're going to slaughter it, because it's not Misa Amane, it's Mia, I think, Sutton. So, like... Yeah,
I mean, they're gonna anglicize the names and everything like that.
Well, even then, it's like...
That doesn't bother me too much.
Excuse me.
There's way too many moving pieces for an hour and 41 minutes. I mean, even the Japanese, like, I think the Japanese got 2 movies. I think they did a part 1 and a part 2.
Honestly, I don't know. I think so, but I'm not going to quote because I haven't watched it.
But I think they got a part 1 and a part 2, so they realized, like, we need at least 3 hours to kind of tell this story. So, I mean, I don't know what you cut and what you put in if you have, let's say, that the idea is you have an hour and 41 minutes to tell even the story up to the point where L dies. I have no idea how you do that in an hour and 40 minutes.
I don't think they plan to kill him. I think if this does well, they're going to ride the you know what, out of this.
They're going to ride the Transformers out of it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I can't see them killing him. This is going to be a moneymaker if people watch it and it does well, which I can't imagine it doing well, but even the numbers of just watching it, I can't imagine them killing him. Like, just alone the scenes, they show a scene in his room, a scene at the school, a scene at the Ferris wheel, a scene in the hall, like this underground crapshoot, excuse my language, and like that one scene where there's like those candles and they're in the underground. Like, I think it's just going to be a bunch of fluff surrounded by just creating this premise of who he is. Like, and I feel like they're going to do not much with it other than have like some sort of cliffhanger where it's between him and Elle and trying to make this like really BS kind of conflict where it's like, they're not going to kill him. There's no way. This moneymaker, if it does well, especially for Netflix, they're never going to let it die.
I mean...
They're going to drag it on and on and on like a high school series.
That's another whole set of problems then, but I mean, I don't know.
I can't see them letting it die.
So then, you know, let's say you're tasked with doing this, even if you were to, let's say you're told, like, we want you to tell a cohesive story in an hour and 41 minutes, leaving it open to do more. I don't even know where you logically, if you're using, I mean, we can only use the anime and the manga as an example, but right. I don't know where you would logically cut that
I
to
don't think...
leave room for more, you know?
So how would you have, like, say you had a chance to make a movie. It would be an hour and a half. Where would you go? And you're not allowed to kill Elle.
I'm not allowed to kill Elle. I have an hour and 40 minutes. And
I'll let you kill Elle if it's necessary.
I mean, honestly, this is an anime that I feel doesn't need a live action, interpretation. That being said, if I was tasked with doing it,
sorry to put you on the spot.
Because, I mean, I'd have to look at something, oddly enough, something like Kill Bill, where, he has a full cohesive story, but part one of Kill Bill is very different from part two. And I feel like I would have to kind of take that approach to it, where...
Have it, like, in chapters, or have it...
Have it essentially be where, I could only imagine doing it as maybe 2 to maybe 3 movies, but they would be very thematically different in the sense of how they do their storytelling, how they go for action and whatnot. Because part 1 of Kill Bill was definitely very action oriented. It was very heavy on, these are cool action sequences. This shows the bride, in her most terrifying, in a lot of ways, shows how powerful she is. And then it takes a step back in part 2 to do a little bit more of the storytelling.
Right.
I feel like you might have to go in reverse here. Problem being, if it's seen by non-fans as being kind of boring and slow, you might not get a second try at it. So, with all of that in mind, how exactly I would do it, I guess.
I was about to say, and then...
It's difficult, because what I would want to do as a fan is very different than what you're tasking me to do.
Okay, then as a fan, what would you like to do? Saying it could be successful, saying that, saying somebody just asked you to make it. How would you make it, whether or not you'd have that fan base?
I would do it as, if you're going to allow me, I would do it as a trilogy. Okay. And I would probably have part 1 end... Where would I have part 1 end? Assuming each part is about an hour and a half long or so.
Right.
I would probably have... And I mean, God, this would kill some people. I might have part 1 end with the introduction of Elle. I think you do a lot of the heavy lifting in part 1. I think you really showcase Light as the kind of person he is, and see his descent into like what... But show why... That's the thing. You have to have people buy into Light as a character. You have to make people like him. That trailer does not make me like Light. It makes me see him. There's a reason why we use words like wiener and whatnot. Light was always, like, he was extremely charismatic. He was...
Well spoken.
He was manipulative poised, in a way that, like, you almost didn't mind being manipulated by him, because he had that natural charisma, and it was like... He knows that he's the smartest man in the room.
Yeah.
And he's the smartest man in the room. So you're kind of okay with him taking charge. And you're just like, hey, I mean, if this is what Light says, that's great. So I think that you really have to play that angle up almost for like at least the first hour of the film. You have to get people interested in him, because if you just make him this, little pisser who... I got a hold of this book. Look at this book. I could kill people all I want. Like, no. Nobody's going to care. Everybody's going to hate him. They're going to hate the fact that he is now, this death god. Nobody's going to root for him.
Well, the
reason why it worked so well is because almost the entire time through, you wanted them both to win. You wanted Light and Elle both to win somehow.
Yeah, that's everyone. Everyone is like, anybody I've talked to at anime cons, just our friends, really anybody. It's such a split of like who loved Light and who hated him. Like, people wanted him to succeed, people wanted him to die, and of course some of them got their wish. But
our wizard friend towards the end was definitely like, no, I'm glad that he died. Like, and don't get me wrong, towards the end he was killing people, and he was using the book simply to cover his own tracks, which, but you need to build up the fact, the reason why you end up towards the end kind of being like, he's not the same person anymore. It's
Yeah.
I'm okay with him dying now. Is that fundamental shift?
Yeah.
So you need to showcase him first of all in the fact of being, this. I'm only going to kill people who have done terrible crimes. Like, I'm going to use this responsibly. I'm going to use my mind to see how the world would be better if these people weren't around. And then beyond that, Light saw even the bigger picture and was like, if I show people what happens when you break the law, people aren't going to break the law anymore. Like, he was seeing this utopia. And the reason why you eventually start to kind of turn against him is you see what he becomes in trying to hold on to this vision that clearly isn't working anymore. Mm-hmm. So if you're tasking me with doing this in 3 parts, that first part has to be almost entirely about Light. It has to be about his relationship with Ryuk, his understanding of what his role is with the book. Again, it's going to come across as being maybe a little boring, a little slow. No. But that's the only way to do the story justice.
I feel like that would be just enough because there's so much to Light, and the fact of the ending kind of being the introduction of L, that kind of brings this excitement from the audience. Yeah. So I feel like, oh, he's coming into the picture. I know who it is. I can't wait to see how this is developed. Where, like, I feel like it does need that development for Light. I don't know about a whole movie, but necessarily in the aspect of understanding who he is, the kind of just little mannerisms he does. Like, I know we always made fun of it when we watched it, and we had memes galore about it, but him eating chips, like, that was just kind of an integral, and I'll eat it. And it's just like, just this, his personality, his mannerisms, everything, it just kind of has to be understood to understand how devolved he becomes, because like by the end you have like this person maniacally laughing and just losing his mind. Like he
becomes an evil villain at the end.
Well, I know, but he's so like out, like just in the deep end. He's so gone. Like from where we started, we're like, holy smokes! Like when did this happen? And obviously you can see this like evolving over the whole series. Mm-hmm. But like when you hit that point, you're like, oh my gosh! Like I feel like the audience has to understand that when you're watching it, because like I don't feel that's what will happen here. You'll just get like, even there was a shot, I believe in the trailer, where he's looking outside and he's like, go ahead, write in the book. And he does, and he looks outside, like, just like a wimp looks outside. He's like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I can't believe that happened. Or it's like, no, that's not what Light would have done. He would have been like, huh, awesome.
Not even like that. He would have just reacted with like, okay, this works. This is legitimate. What can I do with this? Instead of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this worked. No, that's not Light. And that's part of the reason most of the fans aren't ingratiated to this trailer, is because
I can't say a lot of people like the trailer. I can't say that at all, but a lot of people are saying, there's some stuff to hold on to, but like the more Ryuk and Willem Dafoe, you hold on to that so with both hands, because that's the only thing that's going to keep us afloat, I think. Because like I said, after doing so much reading, at first it was just the trailers. I was like, I won't read anything. I won't look at the character list because I don't want to like have a sad moment. When I started reading, it's like, oh, it's going to be all this conspiracy. It's going to be all this. And like, no, the names aren't going to be the same for some of the characters. And I was like, oh, this is gutting me because I'm worried that it's going to take a terrible turn. And I hate when it says based on the manga or even based on an anime and then goes totally like in the opposite direction.
Well, yeah.
You're just riding coattails at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you made it clear, like in our last podcast,
that I get angry,
and some of your and some of your in-depth critique of anime in general, where if you have a source material, like you don't have to be exactly word for word, but stay true to what the point of it was.
The point, the essence, the fandom. You have to realize why people liked it so much. Like if you're not a fan of anime. And, like, I don't know, like, the screenwriters and stuff, they've done other kind of, like, thrillers. And, one of the screenplay writers was, for Fantastic Four, which made me cringe even more. But, like...
We have to know at what point he was a writer. Was he brought in after the director was essentially booted off set? And he was like, this is no longer my movie.
Oh, Lord.
Whatnot. I mean, that's a whole mess. I don't know if we can judge him purely based on that, but it's definitely people, like, there are people who are obviously untested, and there's a reason why the only, anime adaptation film that I can speak of in a positive light that I can recall seeing was the Wachowskis. Like, the Wachowskis are visionaries. They know what they're doing with nothing else than to just make a world seem absolutely breathtaking and like transport you somewhere. Again, I bring up Kevin Smith again here, where he says the point of a movie is to transport you to this different world. The Wachowskis are fantastic at doing that, and that's what they did with Speed Racer. I'm not going to say Speed Racer is the best film ever made, but it transported me to a world I've never seen before, and that world was the Speed Racer world, where they told a good enough story that I was really interested in it. I would have liked to have seen more, and it felt like a good adaptation. This trailer for Death Note does not give me that feeling at all.
Like, the only sense, like I was saying, was, I wish they would have, I'm assuming all of them have read the manga or even watched the anime and, I took what you want from it. But I wish they would take what fans liked about it, not like, oh, this is an interesting premise. What if I, chop it to what and make it all American? The only amount of, I shouldn't say the only amount of hope, a small hope I have is with Adam Wingard. I think that's how you say his name. If not, I'm very sorry. He was one of the writers, and he helped direct, The Guest, VHS, things like that, which I believe would be good for, kind of that thriller tension moments, which I feel will work well. But if everything else isn't working well, it's like having a musician or having someone orchestrate a symphony and everyone can't play instruments. You know what I mean? So it's just noise where I just don't know what to expect. And that's the scary thing.
And I would even argue, The Guest, we both you and I watched that. We liked it. It was very tense and whatnot.
Right.
I haven't watched.
I've heard VHS is good. That's what I'm saying. I haven't watched it.
Yeah. But I mean, in the good thing with
the Guest is a different one. That's not the same Guest we watched. You're thinking of the one with Jason Bateman.
Oh.
This is another one.
Oh, okay.
We'd seen a while ago, because that was back in 2014.
Oh,
but,
I see.
I remember it being all right.
But I was thinking of the Jason Bateman one, where I was like, hey, you know what? He actually did do this whole weird, friend dynamic of people who were, not meshing anymore together quite well. But this is a different movie. Okay.
And that's the thing. He did Blair Witch 2, and some of that, yeah. But that's the thing, though. He does some of the scenes well, but overall his movies aren't very good. Sorry, not sorry.
I'm pretty sure if you Rotten Tomatoes any of those, they're probably not too fresh.
And that's the thing. He's not a mastermind behind any of this either. He's just a writer and somebody who does okay tension. But when you have people that are just okay doing okay things to a great source material,
it took the Wachowskis and their brilliant way of filmmaking and seeing a world to really transport me there. Not saying the Wachowskis would be the right fit for a Death Note movie, but I'm just saying, you need somebody who's got a little bit more cred. Now, yes, at the end of the day, this is Netflix. Netflix original films usually aren't being able to bring in the AAA, extremely, highly rated directors and producers who are probably off making, other films in their own visions, as opposed to doing, an adaptation of, something like Death Note. Also, I would assume most of them would probably look at Death Note and be like, I don't know how you adapt this in a way that makes... I don't know how you can adapt it to make a good Hollywood movie. I don't know how you adapt it in a way to make it a good art house film. I don't know how you adapt it in a way that will make all the fans happy.
And that's the thing. I think that they're trying to also... Netflix is, I'm not going to demean Netflix or whatever, but...
We love Netflix. Netflix is great.
But I feel like they like to cut corners. And let me explain to you what I mean. The Wachowskis, we just explained how much we love them. But I think I've mentioned it to you, but you probably forgot because you weren't as much into it as I was Sense8.
Yeah, Sense8.
They were behind that.
Yes.
That was brilliant. But again, they complained about, fandom, which I don't believe was the total problem. It was just the money. It costs a lot of money. And I think getting anybody of real substance doing these things would cost a lot of money. So they're getting all these, C and D-list people. Not obviously actors, because we have, what's his face? one of the kids from Heroes, I believe, is on there. I believe he's on the actor list.
I mean, like,
William Dafoe obviously is not C or D.
You know, he's.
But I mean the people behind the scenes. I'm not meaning actors.
Okay.
Oka, from Heroes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to be on there, and so like it's not the actors. I don't mean to demean them. That's not what I mean at all. But I mean the people behind the scenes. Like none of these people who seem to be running the show are like A-list people. They're just kind of like, they kind of do this, and they kind of work well in these categories. Let's put them all together, because they had like 3 or 4 screen like writers.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, to be fair, like, okay, we're on an anime channel. Obviously, this is really important to us in the grand scheme of the world and what they care about. You know, a Death Note adaptation movie, like. And this is where I feel there's such a disconnect, where it's like, if this was a huge property and they were just taking the adaptation and taking it in a different direction, they could be like, well, you know, we just want to see what else we can do with it. There's 100 different versions of Batman. Yeah. There's Batman has killed before. I know people are like all mad. They're like, Batman doesn't kill. 1989 Batman killed.
I was about to say, but that's still based on comics.
Yeah,
I don't find it heavily deviates from comics. Where this seems
there's
like
a lot
heavily...
of, but Batman is big enough. Like the point that I was going to get to, Batman is big enough that you can deviate, and people will be like, oh, okay, that's this interpretation. Right. There's lots of different interpretations of Batman, and everybody's going to have, you know, their favorites and their ones that they hate the most, and that's because Batman is one of the biggest intellectual properties on the face of the planet. Death Note, even in anime fandom, isn't.
Right.
And, you know, Death Note is not as big as something like Naruto. It's not as big as Dragon Ball Z. It's not as big as Full Metal Alchemist. You know, it's not... It's beloved by anime fans, but it hasn't crested that point where, you know, you can understand there being different adaptations. There just isn't... There isn't that fan base... There isn't enough of a fan base to be like, oh, hey, I wouldn't mind seeing, you know... I wouldn't mind seeing it done in a different sort of way. Mm-hmm. Like the reason why it's beloved by us is because of the way that it's done. You know? And so to deviate heavily from it doesn't make any sense to me. So then you're kind of making it for the fans, but then the fans are like, we've already had this story told to us probably in the best way that it can be done. Now you're just taking a huge amount of information and compressing it all. And for what? What's the purpose?
I don't see the payoff. And sorry, I'm correcting myself. I think I said Adam Wingard was a writer. He's the director. Sorry, my bad. But still doesn't change anything.
The fact that we don't know if this person's a writer or a director
the fact that he's like done a bit of everything and it's nothing to stand out, like nothing to write home about. Like, obviously I can't talk. I haven't done anything substantial film-wise, but I mean, like when you look at kind of his accomplishments, they're meh. And when you're dealing with something, like I feel like a lot of people, this would be going into another topic, as soon as it gets into anime stuff, people think they can take a lot of liberties and don't respect the audience and the fandom that falls behind them. Mm-hmm. I think they're like, oh, this is an interesting idea, let's run with it. Yeah. Where the people that are going to be watching is this fandom. Like, we're the ones going to be watching.
We're gonna be critical as hell.
It's not like, I don't think a lot of the people watching are gonna be like newbies, are like, oh, what's this weird thing? Like, this little, like, I'm sure they're gonna have it as their banner, like they do with anything, like they did with Castlevania, where it's like, oh, this little kind of film, you can see a quick little blurb of it. Anybody who watches it, it's like, what is this? You know what I mean? It's going to be us watching it.
I mean, to Netflix's credit, I believe one of the first big anime they got on Netflix was Death Note. So, I mean, like, honestly, I understand it to a degree.
That's fine, like, good for you. Good you got the original, but don't keep screwing with it, you know? It's like, oh, because you're one of the first ones who got, I don't know, let's say, Your Lie in April. Oh, go and do a live action one. It's like, no, don't touch it. Don't do it.
You know what?
It could be done.
That I feel like you could actually do a lot easier than something like Death Note.
But to do it beautifully, I think you have to have it in the hands of somebody who really appreciates this. Not somebody who's like, oh, they're kind of okay doing certain, like, emotional, like, clips, or they're okay doing, like, D-list movies. It's like, no. I was moved by Your Lie in April, and I want to be just as moved watching the movie, if not brought to worse tears. You know? Not going to get into Your Lie in April, but I mean, I want I want to feel just as happy or just as sad as I did watching it. And maybe that's the manga part of me where it's like, if I like the original, I don't want much changed unless it's for the better. And I just feel like all of the changes are for itself.
And that's, yeah, like, it's one of those things where if you felt like they were trying to Hollywood it up, then you're like, well, that doesn't really warrant it because it's not that big a property. I feel like they had the same problem with, beyond a lot of other problems, with The Last Airbender.
Oh, don't get me started.
But I mean, I understand the mentality that,
Do
like,
you?
in a way, because I feel like
I would love to hear it.
Maybe I'm wrong on this. I feel like as an intellectual property, it's probably bigger than Death Note, simply because it's in full English. It was made in North America. It was published on, it was done by Nickelodeon as opposed to being, part of Cartoon Network's, Adult Swim, anime, like that anime block. It just hits a bigger audience. So I can understand trying to Hollywood that storytelling. And so then when you don't make a very good Hollywood movie because they screwed it up royally,
but that's the thing.
That's
the
bad.
fandom showed up, and we're the ones that
Yes.
got upset.
well, and I mean, it got nationally panned. So I mean, everybody disliked it. You didn't make a good Hollywood movie. You didn't make a movie that reflected the property, so the fans were pissed off too. I would argue
With this, I'm going to try and take off the anime glasses and just watch it, but just it's hard.
Impossible.
It's possible. It's just hard. If you look at something and try and just look at it unbiased in the sense of watching it for what it is, rather than what it could have been, I still think there's that potential to watch it.
My counter argument to that, now it could, you can view it both ways. It just depends on how you view the movie. Golden Compass.
What about it?
The Golden Compass, by all accounts, is a horrible adaptation of his Dark Materials.
Oh, completely.
Anybody who's ever read them said they hated it.
Right.
I never read them. I actually didn't mind the film. I thought
did
the
not
film
like it
was
at
fine.
all.
I felt as a Hollywood
The
film.
only thing I liked was Sam Elliott because I have a huge crush on him.
Are you
I
saying
love his voice.
you didn't love the Ice Bears? Come on now.
No.
That was what? Oh.
Don't even get me started. Like, it was just so random and out there, and just I'm not even gonna get into it because this is an anime channel.
See,
but I did not like it.
I felt like this is somebody who's trying to Hollywood up his Dark Materials, and I feel like in some ways, now granted, I don't think it was necessarily a huge financial success. I don't think it was a flop either. I'd have to look at the numbers, but
I honestly don't know.
in terms of it being like a Hollywood film that delivers on just being an entertaining Hollywood film, I feel like it did okay.
See,
Like
anybody
I give it
talked
like
to,
a 6.
Anybody I talked to said it was meh at best. Like, if meh is okay, well then I guess you can get meh. But
I'm worried we're not even going to get meh out of this. We're going to get,
But that's from fandom you're talking. I'm speaking trying to be unbiased as a film as it is. If it does its part in explaining to you who these characters are, what their incentives are, and why they're there, it might be okay if you've never seen any of it. But from our point of view, I think it's a losing battle.
That's the thing, is I don't think this can work as a film that is for the fans, because all we're going to do is complain about what was missing. I don't think you could take this what the story is and really make a Hollywood version, because I don't think it really fits that genre. If you give it to some masterful directors and producers and whatnot, they could probably get you something that would work, right? But then it would be such a close adaptation, you'd just be like, well, why am I watching a 2-hour version of this when I just have the series I could go to?
But that's a lot of things that can be adapted. I find that a lot of source material, of course I can't think of any right now, was, I know there's a lot that go verbatim off the source material, and people are okay with that, having that source for them. Like, I don't find anything wrong with it being verbatim. For some people, like, I honestly don't see the need for a lot of adaptations just in general, because the original was fine as it was. Like, obviously I see the need from manga to the anime because there's a total difference between reading and seeing.
Yeah.
And having it spoken to you and getting these characters to kind of have a personality and a voice of their own. Whereas going from anime to a video, I never really cared, honestly, about any adaptation that moved from one to the other if it already had an anime. Because I felt like they either just, I shouldn't say either did good or bad. Most of it was just bad, let's be honest. So I never understood the need or want to kind of try and adapt that. And I think,
then, like,
not saying it can't be done, because I feel like a lot of anime can be adapted, but it's finding, like you said, the right people, the right crew, the right kind of understanding of, can we do this? Do we need CGI? Do we have the budget for it? We can't skimp on it. If we do it right. We can't kind of like just half-ass it. Excuse my language. But, like, that's what I find. I find that some things are, like Full Metal Alchemist, I don't think could ever be done. There's just so much. They're going to do it.
They
don't even get me started. But, like, I can't see it. Honestly, with CG, with anything, like, prove me wrong, fine. But I feel like there's so many components and facets. Like, the budget would be insane. The CG would have to be insane. Like, the best CG we've seen. Like, there's so many components. Like, you can't half-heartedly do it.
Yeah.
Like, if you do it, it'll flop massively. Like, even from, like, a fandom perspective and just a regular person. Because even from a regular person's perspective who's never watched the anime, I find it's a lot to take in. You know, there's lots of, like, different storylines that intermingle. And if you're just coming into it, you're like, what's going on? You know? Like...
I mean, and there are certain anime that I feel like they could... It's possible. Something like Cowboy Bebop, because we've had Firefly, we've had Serenity, we've had Guardians of the Galaxy. I feel like those three things show me that you could do a Cowboy Bebop film that would feel, you know, pretty good, and due to the episodic nature of the show, like, oh, this movie could have just taken place within the confines of that world, you know, between episodes 18 and 19. Like, you could fit a live action whatever in there. Death Note is so...
There's so many components.
Weaved within itself that I don't see how.
Yeah, I can't either, because like I said, we have L, we have Light, we have Misa, we have Rem, we have Ryuk, we have his dad, the police force. We have all these different components, and I hope to God they don't bring in Eminem. Like, I just hope, because it's going to make me cringe. Like, that's something that should have been kept out in general, in my opinion. But, whatever. I just find there's so many things going on, and to kind of... I'm assuming they're going to kind of sample the waters here with the first movie, and I hope to goodness that it... That's a horrible thing to say. But I was about to say, I hope it doesn't do well, because I don't want it to keep going on thinking it's okay to kind of just wreck the material.
So then maybe if it's...
I don't know what to say, because obviously we're going to watch it, so they're going to have those numbers. But I hope against hope, I hope it's good. You know, I hope it surprises me. I hope we're totally wrong and this whole conversation is moot. But the fact is that I don't think it is. I don't think it will be good. I think this conversation will be valid. I don't think that anything good will come of it, and I think it'll just piss off more fans than it would make them happy.
Yeah, I mean, I can 100% say it's going to piss the fans off. It could be the best version of whatever they're trying to do right now, and it's still going to piss fans off.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, the trailers alone set off a wide range of fire.
The most successful adaptations within our lives, like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings... still piss off fans, despite how monumentally successful they are at being adaptations. They still piss off fans. Like,
but at least
and that's done exceptionally well.
I was about to say, that's done exceptionally well. Like, obviously, I know there's differences. I know some of the parts that are missing. So I've read the books. I shouldn't say Lord of the Rings. I read the first book, and then I haven't read anything else. Harry Potter, I don't remember how many books I read in the beginning, but I think the 3 or 4 books. Yeah. And it went on for a while. But either way, based on what I read, I was okay with it. And just kind of, even if I disconnected myself from the books, I was like, oh, I'm okay with it.
They're good Hollywood movies.
They're good. That's
very
the thing.
Good.
I'm obsessed
we
with
watch we watch through them. We watch through them
time.
Probably, like twice a year at the very least.
We're not going to lie. We're pretty good nerds.
Yeah,
We've watched all the extended scenes. We've seen everything. Like, we're obsessed with it. And Jeff knows that I am like, I get so sad when I watch the Snape flashback scene. It's like, it gets me every time, and he just kind of smiles because he knows it's going to come for me. But, yeah, so that's the thing.
And you see, like, a live action Death Note movie, there are certain things that happen within it that could potentially evoke the same sort of emotion, but
I don't think
the trailer doesn't show me anything there. It doesn't show me why I should have any investment in what's happening. I have the most investment in Ryuk. I'm like, wow, they actually did a really cool version of him. He looks kind of creepy, but he's also, I mean, he's Willem Dafoe, so you're always like,
he's always creepy.
That's kind of, you know.
He does that character
He's interesting. There's something about him. All the other characters look like stereotypes. And that's the worst thing you can be, is totally unmemorable, because you just look like everything else.
Yeah.
And that's, Light and L are characters that were not like anyone else. Right. They were extraordinary within their world.
Right.
They are extraordinary to us as fans, and to boil them down into what the trailer has shown us so far is honestly a little insulting.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Even like you were talking about emotional parts, obviously I mentioned about the L scene obviously made me emotional, but even the parts with Misa, because like she seems like a stereotypical girl in a way, but as the show goes on, you see that she's more complex, and that she kind of has her own kind of agenda going on. And
she's us. I find that she is the personification of us, where like we fans and like people who seriously believe in what Light is doing, and they think that at least at the start what he's doing is right, she doesn't see his fall. Mm-hmm. So she's literally like, oh my god, like this person who is
fall, but it's,
I mean, kind of, she at the very, very end is the only one left standing, but I mean, like
she's the lone survivor.
she looked at him for a long time like how everybody else looked at him, which was that like, I can understand why he's doing this. He's smarter than the rest of us. Let's just trust him. Let's put our trust in this new god.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, we as the audience, we kind of see what he's doing behind the scenes that she doesn't. She still, for the longest time, believes in the Light that we saw in the first 12 episodes.
And that's the thing. I love that kind of, what's the word I want to look for? That, the difference, I'm just going to use that because I can't think of the word I'm looking for. The difference when, for moments, we think, oh, he is a really nice guy, and they cut to that moment of, like, that evil smirk, and the colors change.
And he turns his back, and he turns it to the audience, and he's got this look.
That's what I wish that it would portray, even in the trailer, that he had this horrible side. Like, he had this, like, cunning side, where it's not even in the sense that he's turned so, like, already, because obviously he hasn't, it's early, but just having that cunningness to have these, like, very dirty, like, moves, that he's willing to play dirty, that he's not in it for anybody else but himself. And he doesn't think about anybody else.
And the fact in the trailer that, I'm assuming that the girl he's talking to is Misa.
I believe so, yeah.
Where they're talking, and she's the one who's egging him on.
Yeah.
She's the one who's like, no, I don't think you haven't taken it far enough. Like, that is 100% not the characters.
Yeah.
At all. That makes Light look like a little punk who's maybe being used by her. And I mean, if that's the interpretation they want to take, that's fine, but that's not Death Note anymore. Death Note is entirely Light and L, and how you characterize those two against each other. They are Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty. We're just getting the view from Moriarty's side.
And that's the thing, is my fear it's going to be like that, where it's like, oh, they like the first one, let's just keep doing this Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes thing, where it becomes like a series of movies, where it's just them going back and forth, cat and mouse, and he never gets close enough to get him. Where I don't want that. If I want that, I'll watch Cumberbatch do Sherlock Holmes, and I'll be super happy. That's all I want. But when I'm watching this, I don't want that.
No.
I want what I appreciated initially,
Light and L.
And that's exactly what I wanted. But,
so, I mean, on the whole, I guess we could say...
we're not optimistic.
No, we're not optimistic, and maybe that's on us for being too close to the source material. Maybe that's on us for having seen what's normally happened with live action, especially ones that have been pushed really hard in the West. I mean, Dragon Ball Evolution was a garbage fire.
I knew exactly where you were going.
That was targeted to the Western audience.
Oh,
like this sort of thing, from what I understand, taking anime and doing a live action adaptation, It does happen in Japan fairly often. Like, it's something that does happen.
But those
They're
aren't
doing
necessarily successes either. Like we did.
I mean, they're successful enough that they continue. There's a reason
Well,
why they did Death Note
I heard
1
Attack
and
on
2.
Titan didn't do very well.
And there's a reason why those exist. They do well enough to warrant their existence.
What?
They do they do well enough that they continue doing it. Like,
well, Attack on Titan obviously has that popularity, but they only did, as far as I know, the Attack on Titan 1 movie.
They did 2.
They did 2?
They did 2 movies, just the same as they did with Death Note.
I've been too tired lately. I haven't been on my game.
The Full Metal Alchemist movie definitely looks like it's going to be done in Japan.
They
like,
didn't
it's
do
going to
well,
be a Japanese thing.
Like, the only Japanese show I can think of that they did a live action of and did decently well was Nana. Like...
See, but I think...
But that's not hard to adapt that.
Our idea of success versus being successful in Japan is going to be a little different.
Obviously.
The fact that these are continuing to be made shows that, if nothing else, there's a buck to be made. I don't know. Well, critically
obviously.
speaking, they're probably not viewed as the best. There's a reason why Transformers keep being made despite being critically garbage. So, I mean, maybe they are also largely critically panned. I don't know. I'm not...
I haven't watched a lot of live action, honestly, except for Nana, and I was okay with it.
That's an anime. Again, there are anime that you could do live action.
That's the thing. That's an easier one to adapt. You just have to have the right characters, the music, and all that jazz. Where, like, Attack on Titan, I never knew how they could have done that gracefully, so to speak. Like, I just didn't think the CG was there. I didn't think there's a lot of things.
I mean, Transformers, I go back to Transformers all the time. If nothing else, it at least makes me believe that these large Transformers exist and that they're fighting on the planet. Like, so these huge humanoid titans, I could actually see them doing that okay. The main problem that I have with getting back to Death Note and anything like Death Note, so much of what makes Death Note good is stuff that's happening in the minds of the character.
Right.
And that's very hard to do in a live action film. Well, then you'd have to have like constant narration happening, which, I mean, that's fine. You can do that, but not a lot of live action film decides to do that. You know,
well, if it's done, it has to be like the main focus would be this would be another kind of topic. But the fact is, a lot of movies I find falter on the fact of if they have this inner monologue, they can't just have like Sailor Moon where they're transforming and nothing, like everyone else is waiting. You can't have this inner monologue and have people just standing there. You have to have them doing actions and going through the motions of doing things while he's having these thoughts. But I don't think they have that kind of a money investment or care to do that. I think it's just kind of like, oh, we'll just show that he's an ass. Sorry. But that he's a wiener and that, you know, he has this book, he has his power now, and there's another guy chasing him. And yeah, you'll see what we'll do next time. Because I don't hear any rumor that they're going to be another one, but I can't see them not. They're having an hour 40 minutes to kind of start building this world. And if it does well, I'm assuming they'll run with it. Because I'm assuming it's not as expensive as, you know, something that's a cent 8.
Well,
which I am bitter about. That's totally different.
We're gonna see in a few weeks, and I mean, we'll either you'll have your video up of your thoughts on it, or maybe we'll
do a
come
live
together and do
after,
a live podcast after. I think doing a podcast right after we watch it.
We'll both be super bitter.
Who knows? We'll both be. We'll either be both bitter, or we'll both be exceptionally
elated.
Surprised, or we'll be like, that wasn't as bad as I was fearing, but it was still bad.
Yeah, I'm assuming. I'll have my normal analytical side where I'll be taking notes, and then Jeff will just be enjoying it.
Or not.
Our normal way of watching anime. But I think we've talked about everything that we needed to talk about tonight about Death Note. I think we've kind of...
Our podcast might be longer than the film.
Oh, no. No, I don't think at this point it has. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again on another podcast. Likely the next one will be Death Note, but who knows? There might be some before it. But until next time, we'll see you later.